This is the Hannibal podcast on TV Podcast Industries, Season 3, Episode 2. Welcome back, Hannibals. Ciao. This is Hannibal on TV Podcast Industries, the podcast about the hit TV show Hannibal. We're looking at episode 2 of season 3, Primavera. I'm one of your hosts, John.
And I'm your other host, Irene.
We are most definitely your fine and well-ripened young Hannibals. And we're going to be here to delve again into the tableau, to the table, and everything in between for season 3 of Hannibal, this incredibly tasty TV series. And as I said, this week we'll look at episode 2, which is entitled Primavera. Remember, for those listening, this is a mature podcast, so there will be swearing, there's going to be discussions about murders, gore, horror topics, and again, pillow talk, large amounts of hiding behind pillows, screaming, running out the room, beads of sweat hitting your forehead. So yes, be warned. Just to remind you all, we are part of TV Podcast Industries, and you can find and listen to us at www.tvpodcastingindustries.com/iTunes or any other good podcast catcher, such as Stitcher or Player FM. Just search TV Podcast Industries, and you can listen to us also on our website at www.tvpodcastingindustries.com. And of course, you can send us in any feedback or comments that you so desire on each of the episodes on the podcast at feedback@tvpodcastingindustries.com. With that, we will be having a new little segment, which will be on the Psychiatrists Chair, because we do have some feedback from our first episode. It seems quite a long time ago now, but apologies for that. Unfortunately, not Irene's fault, totally my fault. I was on holiday, and enjoying the sun of the south of France, very close to Italy, actually. So I could have been one of Hannibal's, next targets.
Near Palermo?
Yeah. I was slowly basting away in the Mediterranean sun.
Go on.
I'm doing that now as well in Ireland.
I wasn't.
The heat wave seems to have hit Ireland as well. So just remember, in each of these episodes of the podcast, we're going to look at the murder tableau for each episode, followed by our 3 courses of each of the episodes: an entree, a main, and a dessert. And then finally, we are going to look at Hannibal's tasty table and the food that he may or may not have enjoyed. But again, we've got another new segment here, and one that I don't really want to be doing too often, but unfortunately, we have to. Cue floods of tears.
You say it, I can't say it.
It's the news. It's the bad news. It's the really bad news, and our teary reaction that reports are in on the FBI wire that Hannibal has 3rd season will be his last on the NBC network. NBC went and cancelled the show. The showrunner, producers, and networks all issued statements. Twitter was literally set on fire in a hog roast with the hashtag news.
There was more than us upset.
Show creator Brian Fuller had obviously, was very gracious and released a little statement there. So just a quick excerpt from it is that, NBC has allowed us to craft a television series. I think that's so gracious of him. It's really generous of him that no other broadcast network would have dared, and has kept us on the air for 3 seasons despite the cancellation chow ratings and images that, as he goes on to say, would have shredded the eyeballs of lesser standards and practices enforcers. And Fuller basically said then that the team, the NBC president, John Salka, and her team have been fantastic partners creatively, and have been supportive beyond measure. And that that Hannibal is finishing its last course at NBC's table this summer, but maybe a hungry cannibal can always dine again, and that is the big hope. That is the Save Hannibal hashtag that we are firmly behind, and we are certainly confident that such a good TV show could find an alternative partner and broadcast for a fourth season, and of course, hopefully, many, many more seasons of this gripping season. Really, like Irene, what did you think other than shock horror?
I did. I thought the statement, like you said, very gracious of him. And when he said it, then I was kind of going, he does have a point, but I'm hoping that they were the groundbreakers, and now exactly somebody else will hopefully pick it up, and it'll be one of those ones that just, like, in 20 years' time, people are going, they could really end this now, couldn't they?
Yeah.
I hope so, because there's loads of material there.
Absolutely. I mean, I suppose as well, NBC were in quite a tricky situation. I mean, I know for myself doing Gotham TV podcast with Derek, and we'd also, we also look at the expanded DC universe, and NBC were the network that had Constantine, which was another DC Comics property, and that was cancelled after its first season, and after only the first 13 commissioned episodes. So
very quick, yeah.
And they took a lot of flack there, really, for that. I mean, rightly or wrongly, that's to be argued in another time and another place. But
Constantine's a different animal.
It is, but they certainly received another dosing of mashed potato and eggs here, really. But nonetheless, I do also think that NBC, in their statement that they issued, were also very gracious about what Hannibal had done, and that they went on to say, "We have been tremendously proud of Hannibal over its 3 seasons. Brian and his team of writers and producers, as well as our incredible actors, have brought a visual palette of storytelling that has been second to none in all of television, broadcast or cable. We thank Gaumont and everyone involved in the show for their tireless efforts that have made Hannibal an incredible experience for audiences around the world." So, I mean, I think they realised that, but I suppose maybe unlike HBO, which, when you think of The Wire, for example, which had no kind of ratings, I mean, certainly over here, The Wire, I remember watching... It was
after it was finished, even, people really started watching it.
All on DVD, exactly.
Yeah.
So, it's got different pressures as NBC, as a network, maybe... certainly different from, say, something like HBO, and even, say, like the BBC or RTE in the UK and Ireland, respectively, which are primarily state-owned, and they do maybe have a level of creative freedom that is very different from commercial networks. So actually, for NBC to have had Hannibal over 3 seasons, over 3 years, is huge testament, I think, probably to them in the end. Again, as well, the De Laurentiis production company was also active on Twitter at the announcement. So there was certainly a lot of social media toing and froing, a lot of statements, a lot of tears over this. But, I think we will, of course, be here next year, no matter what. Really, as we will retrospectively be looking at seasons 1 and 2 of the TV show Hannibal. We always like to do things backwards here. Why not do it in reverse? It's just like putting on your old Betamax or your VHS into rewind. Plus we will delve into the movies and the books surrounding this hugely iconic character. And of course, if Hannibal is picked up by another network in the USA or even anywhere else, because in Ireland, it's on Sky Living. So, we'll be looking and discussing Hannibal Season 4. # Save Hannibal.
Come on, Netflix.
Come on. I know. Come on, Netflix. Buy it up and just drop it all in one go. Globally.
Yeah.
Just like they did with Daredevil. I mean, that was just so good on Defenders TV podcast. So, don't you agree, Irene? Just
brilliant.
Dropped, ready and waiting, and you can consume it as you will. It's like a tapas. You could argue it's like a tapas or a meze.
It's really nice, actually, when you're getting the messages from people. If they did that with Hannibal, imagine. They'd be like, don't watch the next one, you'd be devastated. And you'd be, I have to watch it now. Like they were sending in the reviews for Daredevil. They go, you'll love what's happening in the next episode. It's like, you're watching it already.
But we will most definitely be there next year for, and I'm going to, fingers crossed, to be very confident for season 4 of Hannibal. I hope that this prediction comes off. But I think with that, we can go on to our review of episode 2 of season 3, which was called Primavera. This was directed again by Vincenzo Natalia. He had done the first episode. And this was written by Jeff Vlaming and Brian Fuller. And I also took down the cinematographer, which was James Hawkinson, because I thought the look of this episode was amazing. It really looked really great. But I think I shall go on to the synopsis before we delve onto the tableau. After the horrific event that almost took his life, Will Graham awakes from his coma and, with his wounds now healed, sets off with an unexpected companion, Abigail Hobbs, on a search for the murderous Hannibal. In search of closure, Will begins to piece together evidence that leads him to Palermo, Italy, and to a disturbing gift, a broken heart. During suspicion of the local law enforcement, Will becomes embroiled in the long-standing Florentine killer investigation known as Il Mostro. However, as Inspector Rinaldo Pazzi, who believes that Hannibal Lecter and Il Mostro are one and the same, tries to enlist Will to his investigation, it appears that Hannibal still holds influence over Will Graham's actions, as Will becomes unsure of his own allegiances.
Interesting last line, John.
I know, interesting indeed. I think very interesting episode, one that doesn't naturally fit with our structure as well. So that was kind of interesting, but
throwing a curveball.
Yeah, a little curveball from Hannibal, which I suppose they certainly have earned for 3 seasons. But this was a little curveball, definitely, to go, oh no. We've got the structure wrong. But
no, I think it'll be fine. It'll come right.
Absolutely. But I think moving on to the tableau, to the murder tableau, I mean, I'd gotten pulled out 2 things here. One was we had more of the murder tableau for episode 1, actually. That it was called a gift. By Hannibal, and it was identified as a broken heart. Hannibal's broken heart as well in this episode.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really interesting. I also thought it was really interesting that it was definitely Tony. It was, unfortunately, poor Tony Dimmond.
Tony Dimmond. Poor Tony.
It was definitely him and not Bedelia. Because, yeah.
It was a man.
Yeah, it was definitely a man. And if they couldn't have made that scene even more grotesque and horrendous, it was not just his torso, like I thought it was in our last podcast, but it had his 4 limbs. Well, it was decapitated, and his 4 limbs cut at, I think it was like the elbows and the knees or the ankles, and folded in to the torso cavity. Like
when Will is describing the splintering the bone, not just breaking them.
Yeah.
Splintering them. And it was unfolding.
Yeah, and that's
very,
the thing.
very visceral. We
got the raven stag or the raven crow as it turns into that and heads towards Will Graham. Like, if it's not disturbing enough, it evolves into something even more grotesque and more disturbing, as it kind of reminded me about Resident Evil. Something out of Resident Evil, how it kind of came to life and seemed to be backward, but representing something that was forward and normal, if normal.
I actually thought that. I thought it was walking backwards.
Yeah,
but then the antlers, obviously not. So, but I know what you mean about the move. There's something about the way it was moving.
yeah, it was really, really kind of disturbing. But I love that they kind of delved back in to a tableau that had been done previously, and not from a FBI murder investigation in terms of let's look at that case again, but in terms of the meaning that it had to Will Graham and the relationship between Will and Hannibal, and how Will, to an extent, is understanding this adversary and his prey, as he's kind of looking for him and hunting him down in this season. So I thought that tableau was pretty good, but we did have a second one. It may be Hannibal's tableau, or it might not be. And that was the tableau of a much earlier murder, based around the Botticelli painting. And I thought that was really, really good. And it might be that it might be Hannibal from the Il Mostro. And I think that's one of my main courses. So we can talk about that a bit more, but certainly I thought that sort of framing of, I think, that the two, characters of that painting on the far right, was great. I mean, the painting itself is very, very famous. And the painting as well is called Primavera, which is the name of the episode. And it shows, so in my research on this, it shows the biting wind of March, Zephyrus imposing himself on the nymph Chloris, who is kidnapped by him, but later is wedded to him and becomes the goddess of spring. And I like it that they were found in a dumpster. This representation of this very famous Renaissance painting by Botticelli for, I think, the Medici. So that was kind of interesting, and yes.
The way they were looking into each other's eyes, it's just chilling.
Yeah, but the modern setting in a dumpster, I wonder if that had any philosophical beats for the producer and the writer. Maybe.
Dragging it into the 21st century.
Yeah, I mean, it's very controversial painting to all accounts, and actually it didn't have a title. It was given a title by the art historian Gregorio Vasari, apparently, and it's an allegory of spring. Because I must say, with the title Primavera, I was thinking, ooh, that's an Italian cuisine term. And then
that's what I thought.
And then I saw that the painting was called Primavera, and I was thinking, oh no, maybe it's not. Because we all assume that all the titles of the episodes are culinary phrases or terms. But it is also a culinary term for a cooking term, which is a spring style. It means a spring style, and it symbolizes spring. So it could be fresh spring vegetables in a dish, or young animals, such as a baby lamb, which is very linked to spring, or suckling pigs, that kind of element. So any kind of cooking that involves this spring style of vegetables or meat in Italy is also given the term Primavera.
I actually did presume it was the painter that had given it that name. It's interesting that you said it was actually afterwards. Historian.
Apparently no title. It was painted around 1482. And apparently it's kind of a representation of a biblical sense. So instead of a apple tree in the background, you've got the orange tree, which was apparently a Medici house or family emblem or sigil or fruit.
And you don't know if the flowers, you were saying the flowers matched the crime from 20 years ago as well, or the flowers, they look the same as the one in the painting, when he said that the painting in the gallery.
Yeah, so that, and I mean, I think this is, is it Hannibal? Is it not? Again, it's a great little way of maybe adding more menace to Hannibal, that he's been operating not just in the Chesapeake Bay area and around Baltimore and Washington, but it is also, dining out across culinary Europe as well.
And could be worldwide. We don't know yet.
Yeah, exactly. Have you got any thoughts on the tableau, Irene?
I thought the unfolding bit, like you said, that scene, Will is really shaken by it walking towards him. When Abigail calls him, and it takes him a couple of minutes to come out of it, and he's I understand Hannibal even better here. Where would it be without him? And he's kind of like giving a rueful laugh. You're like, yeah, imagine. I wouldn't want to be picturing stuff like that. But obviously, that's what Hannibal knew he would see.
Yeah.
And he knew he would guess that it would unfold. Very visual.
Yeah, and it's one of those psychic links almost that seems to be implanted in this episode as well. This kind of sort of psychic or connection between Hannibal and Will Graham, which I think we'll explore in our 3-course menu, which I suppose we can move on to. So, Irene, what's your starter or your entree?
The first thing I was going to say was the recap that showed at the start. It showed what was actually said that night in Hannibal's. When Will came after everything had happened, and he sees the blood coming from under the door from Jack, and he walks into the kitchen and finds out that Abigail is still alive. And you don't even have barely time to absorb that, and then you can tell by Abigail's eyes when he says, "Where is he now?" that he's actually behind him. And obviously then he stabs him. But it was what Hannibal had said to him. He said, "You want to take my life and my freedom." Even though Will's first words were, "You were supposed to leave." Which, he's like, "I'm on your side still." Yeah. And Abigail says it to him later, then she's like, "You had a chance to tell him the truth, but you kept lying to him. Like, well, maybe if you hadn't done that." Seems to be what she's saying. If you hadn't done that. It's like she doesn't really understand what Hannibal is. Yeah. And Will absolutely does. So he said to him, "I forgive you, Will. Will you forgive me?" And then he cuts Abigail's throat. So he does know what he's doing, and he knows Will knows what he's doing, but she's, I don't know.
Yeah, she's still almost like a cat caught in the headlights. Yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't know what to do, so I did what he told me. You're just kind of, Will, shake her, like make her see what's actually happening. But I suppose obviously we know, her history and stuff. So
yeah, you're telling her to run, like you're shouting, "Run!" And at the same time, there's this tender moment occurring between Hannibal and Will about what they know about each other in an intimate way, in a sense, in their head, and then it's almost like this, "I'm sorry, Will, but I have to do this now," as he cuts him. Now, we do know from Bedelia that you're not in that place, or you're not in another place, or you're there, or you're not there, or whatever, unless Hannibal wants you to be there. So maybe, just maybe, he intended on giving Will a memento, a memory through physical cutting, of his and stabbing. It's not one that I would particularly like.
No, anyone who's thinking of giving me that as a gift, you can keep.
Yeah, cuddly toy will do.
Can't return that.
But not, it's very much then becomes very brutal. But it's almost like a sincerity behind it, that Will knows that this is what's going to happen. And Hannibal does. And then, as you say, but Abigail is kind of frozen. She's totally naive to all of this. And unfortunately, well, we think she's dead. And I suppose that brings me on to my appetizer, is that I was gobsmacked when I saw Abigail alive with Will. Yeah. I was going, whoa. I thought she was totally dead, throat slit, all that kind of thing. And it transpires that this episode is such a twisty-turny episode, which I found really, really good.
You're kind of led along, yeah.
Yeah, no, you are wondering, well, is this a figment of Will's imagination or isn't it? Or are they both dead? Or is one of them dead and another's alive? Or are they both alive? Is it a dream? Is it reality? All that kind of thing. And I really enjoyed that. It was a really nice sense of Will chatting to Abigail about the monster that is Hannibal and about how he's come to this place, this chapel in Italy where Dr. Tony Dimmond was put on 3 swords, just his torso. You know? And yeah. I really like that. And it also plays in a bit later on because you start second guessing the entire episode. I mean, there's the moment where Hannibal is in the chapel as well, looking down on Will as he's sat there and the whole crypt area. And you're just going, is this actually happening? Because I thought Hannibal was on a train hightailing it out of Florence, out of Italy.
Yeah. You're going, is he even there? And then when the inspector said to Will, "Are you dead?" You're already dead. I was like, oh, is he actually dead? I was like, okay, I either need to turn this off and give it a minute or start again because I need to see. There must be, clues or something. Like, it's only afterwards when I was thinking about it that I was thinking there was little bits in it that kind of, you're obviously supposed to think that Abigail is alive at the start, and it kind of leads you along and gives you little clues that maybe she isn't. And then they pull the sheet over her and you see that it looks like her eyes were open and she's just staring, that she had actually bled out on the kitchen floor. So, and then you see she probably was dead. But I still couldn't have definitively said she is. I was still kind of going, but she got, oh no, but it was just Will talking to her. And he said, I found a place to keep you. So you're going, oh, it is just in his mind then.
Yeah. Actually, that brings me as well to when you find out that she actually is dead and Will is actually alive. I think it's one of the great bits of this episode is the contrast between this is what I took anyway, the medical areas. You had the medical crew trying to save a life in Will Graham, and then you had another medical crew in terms of the pathologists cutting up, but then preparing a dead person, in this case Abigail, for embalming. And you just had this rush to save a body and to keep the heart going and to keep it alive, and another more sedate process trying to preserve a body after death, ready for a funeral of some sort. And I thought that contrast in the episode was absolutely amazing. I really did think that was great. And it also made me want to then see, well, what's happened to all the other people? Where's Jack Crawford? What's happened to
Anna?
Yeah, what's happened to Anna? What's happened to Bedelia? Because we don't see Bedelia, but I mean, definitely that torso is Tony Dimmond.
Yeah.
So, I thought it was a really good, sort of, twisting and turning of people's expectations and what they thought may be reality, what might be, a figment of an imagination or a dream. I thought it was a really good episode for that.
That was great. Great storytelling.
Yeah.
You're completely caught up in it, but then it starts making you think as well.
But also just quickly, one thing that sort of links into our very sad news about the cancellation of Hannibal on NBC is that if someone's just coming to this episode or to this series for the first time and they watch this episode, it could be quite disorientating for them. I mean,
I don't think you'd go back to it if you came in on this episode.
Yeah, it's really, you do have to be kind of fully immersed to an extent, I think. I suppose it depends who you are, but it makes it difficult for a general, maybe non-invested sort of audience member to suddenly just sort of take it by the reins and to keep watching. But in that sense as well, that's the bravery of this type of storytelling, production, and writing. So, in that
Exactly.
sense, it's testament to the showrunner, the actors, the producers, the writers standing by their guns, most certainly.
Because I'm sure they had to keep making the argument that it wasn't inaccessible. It was inaccessible maybe on that basis, that if you couldn't just pick it up at any. But it's not a half-hour sitcom thing, so obviously you shouldn't be able to just tune in like at any episode and start watching from there.
Exactly.
You know, you need the background, you need the whole story.
You could say the same thing about The Wire, probably The Sopranos, all of those, you know, The West
True
Wing.
Detective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You need to follow it from its genesis. And so your main course, Irene?
My main course was Will's his talks through the episode. I thought that the one with the talk with Abigail in the hospital room at the start, I really loved that, where she about parallel universes, and she's saying that this is just our reality, and you know we don't have an ending yet. He hasn't given us one. I thought that was really good. And Will's trying to say like, well, he's not going to give us one. You know, he operates several trains of thought at one time, and he's saying to her that just because there is an ending, maybe this is just our ending. And she's saying no, she still wants to go to him. You know, and even Will seems shocked by that. Like you still want after everything.
Yeah.
And she's just, yeah, absolutely. But I really liked that. I really liked the parallel universes idea, that she's saying, you know, maybe this one's pretty hard on me. Like maybe there's one that isn't as hard on me. And he's saying, yeah, everything that is going to happen has to happen. So there definitely is a universe where your life is a lot easier. You know, at some point something changed or something didn't happen. And for her, that's probably way back. It's probably not even Hannibal.
Yeah, definitely. It's a nice little sci-fi touch, I reckon. That when I kind of listened to it, I thought, oh, that's a nice little nod there. I like that aspect of parallel universes, definitely. And I thought it spoke of that intimacy between Abigail and Will, and a sincerity which, again, it was about whether were they alive or were they dead. Is this a conversation they're having in heaven or hell or purgatory? Or
I actually thought that purgatory, it was like a waiting room.
Yeah.
You know, they're just having a chat in the waiting room, waiting for something to happen. It's like a really good waiting for Godot. Abigail and Will talking.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it was really good. Have you got any more on the main course?
His chat with the inspector as well. I was just going to say, because when, like I already mentioned it, but when the inspector said to him, "You're already dead," but it's because Will kind of is being quite short with the guy anyway. He's not really giving him much, you know, he's not being very accessible himself. And the guy says we're both carrying the dead with us, and he keeps trying to make comparisons between himself and Will. And he says, I do what you do, you know, I put myself in their position and I'm really good at that. And I can actually know, I'm not just guessing or feeling, I actually know what they're thinking, like, and what they were thinking when they did something. And Will says, carry your dead outside, like, go away from me kind of thing. So then Rinaldi says to him, you're already dead. And Will's like later saying to him in the catacombs, you don't know which side I'm on.
Yeah.
And I think the guy thought he knew what side he was on. He thought, because he's the same as him, he's out to get Hannibal and he'll do anything to get him. And then when Will says, I forgive you, you're thinking, maybe he's not actually that clear. Like you said earlier, maybe he's actually not 100% just out to get him.
Well, I'm going to do something very uncouth here and have dessert for my main course, to be honest, because that really links in with my dessert point, which is, you know, Will, is he or isn't he under the influence from or controlled by Hannibal? And it is basically along those lines that, you know, he's down in the catacombs with the inspector, and Will Graham goes, you shouldn't be down here alone. And Rinaldo Pazzi goes, I'm not, I'm with you. And then he, as you say, he goes, you don't know what side I'm on. And I was kind of like, it's not helpful, Will. It really isn't helpful you saying this, because it's really beginning to cast a bit of doubt and some aspersions on, what it is you're actually doing. And certainly then when he shouts out Hannibal in the catacombs, and the camera pans or goes to Hannibal, who's down there, or he's in the chapel at least, and he's heard him. And then it comes back to Will, and he just says, I forgive you. And you're like, okay, he's stabbed you, he's left you for dead, or so we are led to believe again. Was he left for dead? Did Hannibal know that he was going to survive that traumatic experience?
Because Abigail says he knew how to cut them, that he wanted them to live.
Yeah, and he goes, I forgive you. Has their patient-doctor relationship gone too far? Is this that ultimate bromance, or more, or less, or there's something really beginning to evolve here, I think, in Will, which I'm really excited to see how that pans out in some of the episodes coming along. So I loved that. And I loved how it just sort of threw an element of doubt into the audience for Will. Because Will has been the sympathetic character. He's been the victim to an extent, a long drawn out victim, a professional victim. And now he's kind of saying that he forgives Hannibal for what's happened or what he's done to him. And maybe it only goes that deep. Maybe he's still after Hannibal to get him locked up, and he doesn't forgive him for everything else. But, we saw in the last season that, he did try and, kill Hannibal as well, try and get him back for Hannibal's attempt on his life. So, it's obviously a very complicated relationship, and not one we would advocate for normal people who are dating. But that I thought was a really good, and I think it links in with my starter, which was the whole twisty-turny episode. I think this whole episode threw people off guard because of things they thought they knew about characters, and even maybe how an episode should be constructed, like ourselves, or what we felt episodes were constructed in terms of a pattern. It was all kind of mixed up slightly here, and it was really good. It was another thing where it just really kept everything on edge and dynamic, and I really liked that.
I like the way you're not sure what Will is doing. You're not sure if it's because he's so like Hannibal and he's trying to think like him that he's just trying to manipulate him, or is part of him becoming even more like Hannibal with the game playing. If he's not amused, then he's bored and he's finished. It's fine. Bye, you're dead. But obviously he hasn't reached that stage with Will yet. No,
it's definitely, the cat most certainly isn't sick to death of the mouse just yet.
No. Will said even if he didn't know we were here, he knew we would come. So,
yeah.
The fact that Will is then downstairs and calls out to him, was Hannibal expecting that, or wasn't he, if he didn't know they were there yet? For definite.
No, absolutely. It's really, really good for this episode. It really is. It keeps you guessing, and it's fantastic. I suppose I might as well also just talk about my main course as well. It's quick, and it links again into that whole relationship with the inspector as well that you had mentioned, Irene, which was the whole Il Mostro, the Monster of Florence, aka ? Hannibal. Is it Hannibal? Is it not? Is this long-standing investigation by the police in Florence? Is it Hannibal? And I love that, but one of the things I really want to drag out is that this is actually based on a true investigation of murders in Italy, in and around Florence and that regional province. I mean, it's really interesting. It was 1985 was the last murder. It's kind of got the mythos in Italy as, say, Jack the Ripper has in England. I suppose the Black Widow in Ireland and Scissor Sisters, maybe. And there were 16 victims, and it was like nearly all of them were couples, and that there were 4 men convicted, but essentially that there was suspicion and ridicule based around the evidence that it really wasn't pointing to these 4 men. They've protested their innocence. But I love that, basing fiction around a true investigation. It's a really interesting way of doing it. And it's certainly more explicit in this TV series than it was in the films, that Hannibal is the monster, is Il Mostro. It was kind of hinted at in the Hannibal film that was directed by Ridley Scott and had Julianne Moore and Anthony Hopkins in it, where a bit of that is based in Florence. I think it ends up with, again, I think it's Inspector Pazzi hanging from a very ancient Renaissance archway in one of the squares there in Florence, at the hands of Hannibal. But I really like that bringing in of a true investigation, a true story, and weaving it into this fiction. It makes it even more frightening, I think. And I really like that, I have to say. And of course, it sets up the guest star, Inspector Rinaldo Pazzi.
It makes it more real. Because I remember seeing, my granny reads all those true crime magazines, and I remember reading about that killer, and they had newspaper cuttings, like, because it hadn't been that long ago, articles about, and warning people to stay away from certain areas that they were trying to guess. Really, is all they were doing, though. Where he might be, and then the location would change, but obviously not that far away or anything, but. So, you can imagine, like, the Questera trying to do the same thing, and Rinaldi is the chief inspector for that agency, I was going to say.
Yeah, and it's Rinaldo Pazzi is played by Fortunato Celino. Hopefully I've gotten that right. And an Italian actor. And I've not seen him in anything previously, but I really like his presence as this kind of downbeat, slightly discredited cop, because he had this wild theory, but he could never follow up on it. He never arrested anyone. He never made anything stick. And he still feels that Il Mostro is out there. But all his colleagues now basically think he's washed up and discredited because it hasn't happened again. Because obviously, if it is Hannibal, he moved to the USA.
Yeah. Now you're after standing right in my tiramisu. That was my dessert.
Well, there we go.
Well, it wasn't really. It's touching on it. Get off of my tiramisu.
I will. I've eaten my banoffee pie at the same time as my lovely main course, which was a bit of wild boar, I think.
Very, very apt.
Yes.
I was going to say, for my dessert, the Questera destroyed his home. And when Rinaldi's talking about that, you're thinking exactly, like, he was so close, obviously. He knew where he was. He had a picture of the man he'd seen sitting in front of the painting. And we know it's Hannibal, but to him it's the Monster of Florence.
Yeah.
He's sure, like he said, he knows it is. But he couldn't prove it, and there was no evidence. And Will just says he doesn't leave evidence. You're not going to catch him.
Yeah.
And he basically tries to talk him out of it. Like he's like, can you not just leave it? I'd advise you to leave it and go home. Don't try to forget it if you could in any way. Just try to forget it. And he just says, well, I couldn't do that any more than you could. Yeah. Because he still thinks Will's out to get him.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was really good. What's the Questera, is it?
Questera.
They're the police, aren't they? The internal police in Italy?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. But it's really just how that's all brought up and how that's linked in with Inspector Pazzi is really, really good, I must say. And it's almost like with destroyed Hannibal's home, but it destroyed his life as well.
Yeah. And Hannibal, like you said, obviously just moved.
Yeah.
He just moved on.
Yeah, exactly. For him, he was done. He had had his fun in the sun in Italy. Now it was time to go where the power lies, to Washington, to the Washington, D.C. area.
Do a bit of shopping on Black Friday.
Exactly. So, with this, do we have any notes, any coffee for this episode, Irene?
I was going to say the defying God is Hannibal's idea of a good time line made me laugh, even though obviously nobody else was laughing, and Will probably meant it as a perfectly serious comment. He kind of had a little wry smile on his face as he said it, but, you know, he's thinking that's so true, right? He's just said to Abigail that if the roof fell down, just collapsed on top of a full mass of people who are praying to God, you know, pretty devout people, he would just think that is hilarious. Like, that is his idea of a good time. And you can't help but smile, like he's bad to the bone.
That's it. And the show is such, has got an atheist aesthetic to it as well, that really it comes to the fore as well when they start to mix those elements of religion with psychology and science and forensics and so on, and how Hannibal is so much of a scientist when he's a psychiatrist, asking these reasoned, philosophical and logical questions, but then he has this artistic flourish that he uses to express his murderous side, I suppose. Like, yeah, I even kind of thought it was a bit that made me laugh was I think Will Graham and Abigail, and Will Graham goes, even in an enlightened world, we still come here to be closer to God. And I thought, none more so than Dr. Tony Dimmond.
Yeah. Like, Hannibal's such a creature of instinct, you know, when he's not working.
Yeah.
He's very controlled, and I don't mean that way, but obviously he sets it up so that he can just unleash, and then what comes out, you know, as I was saying in the last episode, more and more I'm starting to go, that's actually quite beautiful. Yeah.
Like, definitely. I think for me, my notes is just a little espresso, really. And again, it's just to note that there's the use of flashbacks, again in the episode. I thought it was really tastefully done. Going back to the murder scene kind of really gave you, again, another kick up the arse, that how brutal that final episode of season 2 was. But then I just thought that how they dealt with Abigail being dead and Will being alive in that flashback to one being saved and one being prepared for embalming was really tastefully done. I've really enjoyed the flashbacks that they've done in the first 2 episodes. So that was just another note for me, really. But I think with that, I suppose we go on to the table and Hannibal's food, which this was where it threw me this week because we didn't really have it. There's not really a table here that Hannibal prepared this week, other than
the heart.
Nothing. He sets up the tableau, but he doesn't set up a banquet or a feast or a meal or anything for Bedelia or a guest. But whilst there is no banquet, with him enjoying either other people's body parts in a stylish red wine jus, or simply sort of decent food being served up, we do get Will informing Inspector Pazzi that Hannibal eats his victims. But I really love how this is delivered by Will Graham, because Inspector Pazzi says that he couldn't find any evidence, and Will kind of casually informs him, because it's something that they have now realised, that the reason there's no evidence is because he eats them. That's the table. The table for this episode is the realisation of this long-standing sort of bet-down inspector of the the Italian police force that he couldn't find any evidence because there was none, because it was being digested and eaten exquisitely. And that was a really nice little touch, to give that realization to someone else, in the show.
Yeah. Like, you'd have to catch him in the act. You'd have to, how would you prove? He's not going to confess, so.
Yeah. Unless he's just eating it, I suppose. And he would have to...
He could prove it was human flesh.
Have his stomach pumped or something. Which is no fitting conversation for the dinner table.
No. I've just eaten, John.
But I think to sum up then, for the episode, I mean, I would really give this 4 chewy kidneys out of 5. I think it was a really good episode. I love the questions it raised about whether people who you had seen for so many episodes in other seasons were, whether they were alive, whether they were dead, whether we were looking at reality or a figment of someone's imagination. It introduced Inspector Rinaldo Pazzi. It had, I think, a really great contrast flashback of Abigail and Will, one being saved, one unfortunately dying and being prepared for funeral. And I thought that it was a very different episode. It twisted, it turned in what your perceptions of the episode was, and who was real and who was dead, who was alive. But also it changed your perception of Will. It posed uncertainty over Will. Is he still under some kind of mental or psychological influence of Hannibal? And that, to me, made this a really good episode. So, as I say, 4 chewy kidneys out of 5. Irene, what's your take and sum up of the episode?
Well, I was just delighted to see that Will is definitely alive, because we didn't know for definite. I was delighted to see that in 8 short months he was hopping his way to Italy to follow Hannibal. We had the flashback where he remembered him mentioning the Norman Chapel, and off he goes. He's sure. He's like Patsy that way. He knows that that's where he'll find a clue, at least, if not where he'll find Hannibal.
Yeah, it was certainly very satisfying that he was still very much alive. Yeah, it was a really good episode. But I think with that, onto a new segment. We're hoping that this becomes a consistent part of the podcasts. It's the feedback time. We're going to call it In the Psychiatrists Chair, because we feel that ourselves and Irene are leaning back into the sofa and listening to our listeners and what their thoughts are, and discussing those as a psychiatrist would do with his disturbed and disgruntled patients. So we're the disturbed and disgruntled patients. We're the ones seeking professional therapy and medical advice here. So we're hoping that this will become a regular part of the podcast. And of course, I just would like to say that you're more than welcome to send in feedback or comments on each episode of Hannibal and on each episode of our podcast. You can send them in at feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com, and we will be absolutely delighted to read them out on air and to discuss them. It really helps us to tune into what our audience and listeners are thinking. And of course, as well, if you want to leave a review on iTunes, again, you're more than welcome. The more reviews we have, the more people will find our podcast and be able to listen to it, and the more the audience will grow. We received some feedback from a listener called David. Dear John and Irene, I'm about halfway through this episode of the podcast. I've listened to all of the Defenders TV podcasts on Daredevil, but I haven't had time to give proper feedback yet. So that's one of our other podcasts that myself and Irene do with Derek and with Chris. So you can listen to that at defenderstvpodcast.com/iTunes. That's all about the Marvel Netflix Daredevil. So thank you, David, for listening to that. We really appreciate it, and we really appreciate that you've moved on to Hannibal. That's really nice to hear.
Thanks, David.
And I love it very much, he goes. But there's one small thing I have to point out. I paused the show to write this, and if it gets corrected by yourselves before the episode is over, then never mind. And it's that Abel Gideon is very much dead. Remember the spectacular mess Chilton found himself back in episode 7 of season 2. Hannibal had somehow stashed a dying Gideon into Chilton's house, and we saw his heartbeat flatline after the FBI took over Chilton's house. They took the body away. And yes, you're absolutely right that Abel Gideon is dead. I think we were trying to convey what would happen if he were still alive, just kind of like this torso on a wheelchair. I suppose we were just we were being gruesome. We were thinking up gruesome things. But absolutely, David, you're very correct that Gideon, Abel Gideon, is very much, has passed on, both literally and passed on through the digestive system of both himself and Hannibal, as we saw in episode 1. But thank you so much for that feedback and correcting us. We are more than happy to take corrections, but our intention was kind of really just trying to explore if they had gone that way with that character in the TV series as a whole. But certainly, yeah, Abel Gideon is very much dead, and the body is very much taken away by the FBI. So unless it becomes Game of Thrones, and which I know it won't, then unfortunately Abel Gideon will not be returning. R.I.P.
As much as I love it, he is
I
returning.
know. Maybe more flashbacks. He might be in more flashbacks.
Yeah. Hopefully be more of a reveal.
Yes, absolutely. But David goes on to say, I love your podcasts and I'm eager for updates. And so thank you so much, David, for supplying in your feedback. And we will be now podcasting every week with episodes of Hannibal. So remember to tune in and download our podcast for episode 3 of Hannibal from this season 3. And remember, you can find us and listen to us at www.tvpodcastingindustries.com/iTunes or any other good podcast catcher such as Stitcher or Player FM. It just really leaves me to say thank you as always for listening. Thank you so much. Arrivederci and ciao. Bye.
Ciao, Bella.